James want to be first.
Okay. Am I just kind of generally going over?
Yeah, generally going over, here's what I know, and then what some of the questions are. And then if there's obviously more questions than we're going to get to today, so if you've got a really want to be sure we discuss a question, let me know and I'll put an asterisk by it.
Okay, ladies, here's what I know about establishing inclusion. Number one, introductions. Not always what they seem. Dig deeper. Identify the learning objectives and goals of the lesson. Helps learners prepare. It gives them a direction and they can create how to get there. Sharing what you know, sharing information that connects with your audience. Example, using a joke that can make them laugh, make a connection. Encourage the learners, know their need and what they need to develop their learning. Assess learners prior to training, needs, culture, prior knowledge. A good icebreaker activity sets the tone for the class. Using different modes of presentation is icy.
It's key.
Oh, it's key. Looks
I
like
thought icy too.
Yeah, at first.
A feeling of establishing a feeling of connection in the class. Establishing an open forum. Being aware of the people you interact with. Initial icebreakers, mandatory participation. Understanding, respecting cultural differences and nonverbal communication. And here are the questions that we still have. What happens when expectations change with learning objectives? Number two, how do I establish inclusion when prep time is very limited, last minute? Number four, how do I provide an opportunity for multidimensional sharing in my practice? Number five, how do I create an equal balance? And number six, how do you overcome the clique or groups of people, or males or females and groups, whatever. So, do I say anything else about this?
No. Okay. Not unless you have an answer to these questions.
He's gonna take a stab at it. No.
Well, I think it'd probably be good for us all to think about this together.
You can sit down,
I
Jay.
don't want to be a dominant male.
What are some key themes that emerge when you think about establishing inclusion and after what you heard James read off the flip chart? What are some things that automatically come to mind when you think about that?
Participation by everybody.
Participation by everybody, okay. What else?
Awareness.
Can you say more?
Being aware of who you're around, who you're working with, their experiences.
Okay, awareness, all right.
I would
Anybody
like to
else?
share something, actually, with that piece where we talked about sharing information and make a little joke or whatever. About a week and a half ago, I used that because I had to stand up in front of somebody and do a presentation, which those that kind of see me around, I don't like doing that. But anyway, when I got up, I was able to talk about the homeless women, and what I used was that commercial, I don't remember the name, I'm telling you memories, whatever, but where the two girls are like, you don't know if they're in their apartment or if they're at their father's home, but the wash machine is going over. And I use that as an example to say that these young women do not have support from their families, but this young girl was able to call her dad and say, what do I do? The washer's going up, running over, and he asked, did you unplug it? Things that we take for granted that are so simple, other people do not, but to make the connection, the audience was able to identify with what I was saying. You know what I mean? So we were able to make that connection, plus I got a laugh out of them. So that's why I thought that piece
Great
was whatever.
example. Thank you for sharing that, Carolyn. Anybody else? Common challenges we have around inclusion. Establishing it maybe when our objectives are not as clear as they'd like to be. Does anybody have some experience with that or something they'd like to share with their colleagues here? There's a lot of experience in this room, and I really want us to leverage it. Because no one of us has all the answers to all these questions, that's for sure. Martha?
I was in a training class, and it was for managers to basically get to know the back office stuff. But the two trainers didn't really ask at what point we all became managers because it was all at different times.
Okay.
So I was the newest one, so then they would kind of like just dive into a conversation, and I'm like, I don't know what that is. So we were kind of all had different experiences, or just and were managed at different times. So the trainers didn't kind of get a feel for where we were at, and kind of left. Just I had to remind them like, well, I'm newer to this. Can you explain this? So.
And how, I mean, I think that happens to us when we're new to an organization, new to any type of role, any type of group. And a real simple strategy that we use pretty effectively in some management training at where I currently work is simply before we start talking about management theory or good traits of a manager, it's really about what's the collective wisdom in the room. You know, what's your experience with a good manager? What's your experience with a not so good manager? And then where do you see those similarities after everybody puts their items up? Sometimes, depending on your audience and your setting, not always the easiest thing to do if people are, you know, from A to Z in terms of their depth of experience. How do we, and I think we all run across this, whether it's a school setting or a work setting, how do we overcome that clickiness, that, you know, these three people, man, they move in a pack everywhere they go type of thing, or I'm new to the organization, or I'm new to the role, or new to teaching this particular material, and I need some insights or some help, but nobody's kind of letting me in. Who's got some experience with that they'd like to share?
I remember, I don't know if it was something I was watching on television or something, and it had a situation, and it talked about how if you're in a brainstorming, or you're coming up with an idea, or trying to create a solution, and everybody is going in the same direction, then it's not as beneficial as you think. So if you can somehow create, and it may be very challenging, especially like if you're working with adult learners or in training, but create something that's going to require them to solicit help outside of their current knowledge base.
Okay.
So that they have to reach out to someone who knows other than what they know, then that will cause them to kind of open up, and then maybe create an opportunity for that person who is trying to establish themselves within a department or something like that. Because I don't think people realize that if you are, like I said, trying to troubleshoot or even trying to create a new idea, and everybody in there is saying yes, 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 and nobody is saying, I don't think so, then chances are you're missing out on something. So if you can create a situation that is going to require them, or it's going to require them that they don't know all of it, or they're going to have to reach outside of their group, then that'll kind of open up that click there.
Okay. Anybody else? What's an effective way to do that, to get to Anissa's point in terms of everybody's thinking is over here, yet it's really supposed to be this really wide open brainstorming session? Maya?
In an adult setting, I think we did something similar to this in an all-staff meeting where they wanted us to develop a case plan in different groups, but the problem was all the case managers sat together, all the job developers sat together, and another group sat together. So the way the manager structured it, or the trainer structured it, she made, you know, someone from each group, a case manager, a job developer, and from the other group just form individual groups. That way you do have the input from everybody, because if you're trying to develop an effective case plan, it goes much more beyond than what you may know. You know, it needs job developing in it. It needs a bit of everything in it in order to come together. So I guess creating exercises where you do need different perspectives in there.
Okay. Sometimes you force the interaction. Carolyn?
And kind of like what we're doing here, it's forced. You know what I mean? 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, it's never. It's never the same. Right. So you know, even though you might talk more to a couple people, you get a chance to you know, talk to other people, because some of them I've never sat with before. So it's more like well, I'm not gonna say force, but you know what I mean.
Well, no,
using that strategy. Exactly, using that strategy to break it up so that you're not sitting with the same person. You're not doing the same group every week. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're kind of using it here. So.
I guess you can use it with kids too, like not just an adult setting.
Right.
Kids are really
right.
clicky too,
Mm-hmm.
especially if they're comfortable with just their friends.
Mm-hmm.